Hi everyone, this is Kyle with kayDbait. I'm going to be doing a video on public outrage. The first thing I want to mention is that it's okay to have an opinion, and it's okay to react to something with passion. But the issue with public outrage today is mostly that people are not being educated by the things that they're seeing. They're being educated in a way that is biased, and it promotes negativity and harsh action, where things are portrayed in a much harsher light or just in an inaccurate light, and nobody knows how to react, so they react in a negative manner. Public outrage can be used for a good thing. It can be used for bringing society together, having people do acts of kindness for others, but for the most part it is used to spread hate and anger, and it's not so much that people even know that they're being manipulated or even that they are being manipulated, but that is the case sometimes. And when that happens, bad things happen, and not all the time are people to blame. So I'm going to be doing a few key points. What is the cause of public outrage? One of the things that public outrage is promoted by is the media. The news programs you watch they demand some kind of reaction from the viewer. Not always, but for most things is like terror strikes again, or there was yet another bombing, or there was another school shooting, or this person was murdered, or there's so many different, there are words they use and the way they present it that make you want to act. They make you want to react without considering other alternatives. It is a war. It is, Judgment Day. There are a lot of words that will scare you or make you see it in a different way than it actually is. If they presented it unbiasedly and in most cases without passion, then you can assimilate the information in a much more neutral fashion that they don't necessarily like. They want you to have their beliefs, and their beliefs are very passionate. So the cause of public outrage is some kind of act or some kind of event that something wants you to react to, and it causes you to become impassioned. And it can be something as small as a celebrity flipping the bird to some group of people, or a person making an offensive joke when they shouldn't have. But then it can be as big as genocide in another country. So public outrage is the general reaction to, in an extreme way, to an event. So that's all there. The causes of it are numerous. It's just caused by people learning about this thing and being told to act in some way, whether it be from themselves or from the media or from each other. So how to deal with it? How do you deal with public outrage? Well, you personally, when you are presented with this new controversial or extreme information, just like I mentioned before, terror, rape, murder, flipping the bird, being offensive, whatever, you have to stop, look at the information given to you, and say, is this worth doing whatever they want me to do, whether it be your family, your friends, or the media? They say you have to do this, or they present it in a way that makes you want to do something. Stop and look at it objectively. Is it right to act now instead of thinking about it for a little while? And some people say, well, you have to act now. If you don't act now, then whatever it is will be too late. And that's pressure, and it's not necessarily a false pressure. There are things that do have to be done immediately. Donate to charity, donate blood, stop these horrible things that are going on. And yeah, those are things you have to act now. But if you don't think about a proper way to act, will your actions be more damaging than if you waited and acted in a more informed or well thought out way? So you have to do that. You actually have to stop and think. Should I stop and think for a long time? Because if you don't stop and think at all, at even a little bit, then you will almost certainly act without knowledge and act without any kind of foresight. So take time when it immediately happens, when you immediately get presented with something. Take time. Don't just act out of impulse. A lot of people do that. That's what those tweeting things are about. These people just saying the most offensive stuff. And yeah, that's also a cause for public outrage, but that's just a one form of instant reaction without thought. And with the new information age, where any information can be seen or presented in an instant, you see how poorly people react when they don't stop to think. You have to wait, think, then act. The same goes with speaking. The same goes with any kind of planning. If you're really good at snap decisions, fine. But most people aren't, and some people think they are and they aren't. Don't make a snap decision if you have time to think. And you always have time to think. If there's a time when you can't think, then there's usually an emergency and you should probably call the cops anyway. So how to deal with it? Just slow down. That's how you do it. Public outrage is usually caused by not thinking. And it usually causes much more public outrage. Okay, so that brings me to the next point. How do you deal with other people's dealing with it? How do you deal with other people who are reacting to this public outrage? And that one's a lot trickier, because you can have after 9/11, let's use that as an example because there's a lot of people that know about this. After 9/11, there were attacks on people of Islamic heritage, or who looked Islamic, or who even remotely resembled somebody that could be assumed to be of the same religion as the people that caused 9/11. So those were a form of public outrage. People were in high alert for blame. They wanted somebody to blame. And instead of stopping and thinking who caused it, they took the immediate reaction that the media portrayed and attacked people. And that, when you think about that, that caused so much more wrong. I mean, not more than the actual original act, but it compounded it. It didn't alleviate any of it. It didn't make anything better. These people that were innocent were brutalized by society trying to fix without foresight, without thinking. So you, as a person dealing with public outrage, is the same way that most people deal with everyday stuff, is you think about it first. And if it's wrong, you attempt to educate. There was a reason why I didn't go out on the day before and the day of the world ending, 2012, I believe, New Year's. The reason being is other people are dumb. I myself would not do something dangerous, but other people would, driving recklessly, being drunk or high, or just not caring. And then there was a lot of crime. There was a lot of accidents, and there were a lot of people just being idiots. And you have to compensate to these other people. If there is a cry from the media, for people to act, assume that somebody somewhere will probably act on that information. So you have to be able to compensate. And if you don't compensate, then you're likely going to get burned, or at least have a higher chance of being burned. If you are of a certain ethnicity and the media is calling for some act against you because of some third party, you have to protect yourself. I'm not saying that you are wrong in any way, but you are probably susceptible to being wronged by people that believe you to be wrong. So it is important to understand how other people will act given a certain situation. So if you see on the news that some group just did something bad, or that there's another law being, pushed through, or there are ways you can educate others or protect yourself, which is just as important, because you don't want to be the victim, and you don't want to be knowledgeable that it could have happened and not do something about it. So it's important to stop and think. And then if you see, this is also important, if you see somebody else being brutalized or unfairly treated, how do you react to that? Because say a big sports team lost and now there's a riot or something like that. Call the cops, try to get people off the streets, try to, help people lock up stores so that they're not vandalized. There's a lot of things that you can, above and beyond the call of a normal person, to do if you decide to do it. You don't have to do that. You should probably protect yourself. You should probably get home, call your family, make sure there's nothing, because those things riots are bad. People get really hurt in riots. And I'm not saying that that's a normality, but I'm just saying that in extreme cases, there are events that you can see. It's like you see there's a riot downtown. Don't go downtown. It's simple. But if your son or your friend is downtown, do you go down there to try and find them? I don't know. You'd have to weigh the pros and cons. But that's what you have to do. You have to weigh the pros and cons. If you don't and you just act off of impulse, you're doing what they're doing. You're acting on impulse. You can get arrested, you can get killed, you can get, just horribly hurt. And then there's also the chance that the person you're trying to help, that can happen to them also. It's not easy to stop and think when somebody's in danger, or if something is portrayed as being instantaneously, bad if you don't act. But you do have to stop and think. If you don't, you're likely to get burned. And maybe you'll come to the same conclusion as your gut told you to. But at least now you've calmed down enough to make that an educated decision, and later on be able to say, yes, I stopped and I thought about it first. Because if you didn't and something goes bad, you'll blame yourself. But if you did stop and think about it, you won't blame yourself. You'll just say the situation turned out badly, regardless of foresight. And that's really important too, because if you hold on to something like that, if you make a gut decision and somebody gets hurt, you will blame yourself, and that'll stay with you. If you stop and you think, that won't be as likely. Less people will get hurt, less people, on average, on an individual level, people will always get, something bad will happen to somebody at some point. But if you stop and think, if everyone stopped and think, but I can't do that, and the society we live in won't do that, but if you can stop and think about what you do before you do it, there will be less accidents, and there will be less internalizing blame, because it's not your fault, it would be the situation. But if you acted immediately, then it probably would be at least partially your fault. So I'm getting a little repetitive. I wanted to have one more point, which is it's okay to have an opinion that seems to reflect that of public outrage. Public outrage is an opinion. So if you have some kind of strong view that the media is pushing and you just agree with, that's okay. You can be passionate about things. You can be angry about things and want change. But the difference between public outrage and an opinion is education, thought, consideration. If you cause a riot and people are getting hurt because of this media blow up, that is the negative side of public outrage. But if you stop and think, even if you do cause a riot, like a march on the White House, or a boycott, or something like that, anything, even if you caused one of those, if you had stopped and thought about it and still deemed it important to try and fix whatever the problem is that you are being passionate about, that is different than acting on impulse and anger, because it's not the same thing. One is rationale. It's a reasonable, thought-out process, and the other one is impulse. And impulse is not always right. It can be, but it's not based off of any kind of intellectual process. It's just, well, that seemed wrong, or, well, that seemed right. And being right from a guess is not as valid as being right from experience, knowledge, or just consideration through time and thought. It's not the same. And while it has the same outcome, it's not as perpetual. You will not continuously be right if all you do is guess. There's a reason why people hire people with experience. And I guess that's it for now. What do you guys think? What was the last thing you became impassionate about? What was the last thing you were told to be outraged at? And what was the last thing that you acted impulsively? And when was the last time you stopped and actually thought about something before you acted? Those are all important questions, and I hope you guys can answer those, because I would love to respond to those things, because I want to know what the kind of people are that watch my videos, and so that I can better know who I'm talking to. And, well, it won't change me. It might give me more ideas to talk about in the future, because I would like to learn about you guys. I'll be making another video right after this one, because I've been on a hiatus, and I hope you guys have a nice day.